Imagine being the smartest person in the room. Not because you talk the most, but because you see the most. You understand motives, you predict outcomes, you notice patterns others miss, but no one ever trusting a word you say, no matter how clearly you explain yourself, no matter how calm your tone, no matter how honest your intention. People are already waiting for the trick. Imagine winning battles, outthinking stronger opponents, turning impossible situations in your favor, yet still losing every relationship. Not because you don't care, but because no one ever knows when you're sincere. Imagine craving love, power, and respect, not as trophies, but as proof that you matter, yet being remembered forever as the god of lies. This is the curse of Loki. On paper, Loki has everything: a god, a prince, a strategist without equal. He has intelligence, magic, charm, and adaptability. He understands people better than they understand themselves. But behind the magic, behind the wit, behind the chaos, being the king of lies is actually one of the loneliest existences imaginable, because when deception becomes your reputation, truth no longer saves you. Today, we're breaking down why it truly sucks to be Loki, not as a villain, not as a hero, but as a man trapped inside the very identity he created and no longer knows how to escape. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Loki's greatest weapon has never been strength. It's not lightning. It's not brute force. It's not an army. It's perception. Loki understands something most beings don't. Reality is shaped by what people believe. If you can control belief, you can rewrite outcomes. But here's the problem. Lies give short-term advantage and long-term isolation. Every trick Loki pulls works once, maybe twice. But every lie adds another brick to the wall, separating him from everyone else. Eventually, no matter how clever the illusion, no one listens. And when no one trusts you, power becomes meaningless. Loki's story doesn't begin with evil, it begins with comparison. Thor was praised, Thor was celebrated, Thor was loved openly. Loki, he was tolerated. Even before discovering the truth about his origins, Loki sensed it. He was different, not weaker, just unseen. And when love isn't given freely, people learn to replace it with attention. If you can't be admired, be feared. If you can't be trusted, be unpredictable. The king of lies isn't born, he's manufactured by neglect. For Loki, lying wasn't a choice. It was survival. Truth made him vulnerable. Honesty made him small. So he adapted. Every manipulation became armor. Every illusion became distance. But survival strategies don't disappear when the danger is gone. They become habits. And habits become identity. At some point, Loki no longer lies to protect himself. He lies because he doesn't know who he is without deception. From this point on, the damage begins to compound, because deception doesn't just reshape situations, it reshapes relationships. When you are always one step ahead, everyone else is always behind, and that distance never closes. Loki becomes impossible to read, not because he's subtle, but because he's never still. Every word is measured, every gesture calculated, every reaction filtered. This creates control, but it also creates isolation. People don't relax around him. They don't speak freely. They don't reveal weaknesses. They perform back, and when everyone is guarded, connection becomes impossible. Loki knows more than everyone, but feels understood by no one. There is a moment that many liars reach. A quiet moment. One where the mask stops feeling like something you wear, and starts feeling like something you are. For Loki, that moment comes slowly. He can't remember the last time he spoke without strategy. The last time he didn't angle a conversation. The last time he said something without preparing an escape. And this creates a terrifying realization. If the lie disappears, what remains? Because beneath the deception isn't confidence. It's uncertainty. The lie didn't hide strength, it hid fear. So Loki keeps lying. Not to win, but to avoid confronting emptiness. Eventually, Loki does try something different. He tells the truth, he explains, he warns, he confesses, and nothing happens. No relief, no forgiveness, no understanding. Because truth has no power without trust. Every sincere moment is interpreted as a setup. Every apology sounds rehearsed. Every emotional admission feels like manipulation, even when Loki means it. His past speaks louder than his present. This is the final cost of deception. When you finally stop lying, the world doesn't notice, and that hurts more than punishment ever could. So Loki turns to power again. Crowns, titles, authority, not because he enjoys ruling, but because power feels like proof. If he can command obedience, maybe rejection won't matter, but power gained through fear is hollow. Nobody stands beside him, they stand beneath him. There is no loyalty, only calculation, and when the room empties, the throne feels colder than exile ever did, because ruling alone is still being alone. At some point, Loki accepts the label. If the world sees him as a liar, why fight it? This is where tragedy hardens. Players slowly become prisoners of the roles they play. Loki doesn't just act like the trickster, he believes he is one. And when identity locks in, change becomes terrifying, because changing would mean risking rejection again. So he stays consistent, even if consistency costs him everything. One of Loki's greatest fears isn't defeat, it's silence. Silence is where lies stop working, where there's no audience, no reaction, no leverage. In silence, there's no one to manipulate, and no distraction from the self. For someone who's spent a lifetime shaping perception, quiet moments feel dangerous, because silence forces reflection, and reflection forces questions Loki doesn't want to answer. To most people, honesty feels freeing. To Loki, it feels like exposure. Honesty means standing without armor, without misdirection, without a backup plan. It means accepting that he might not be enough without the performance. And that fear, that maybe the lie was the only thing making him valuable, keeps him trapped, not in chains, but in habit. Deep down, Loki envies those who live plainly, those who speak directly, who are believed the first time they talk, who don't rehearse every interaction. They may lack his intelligence, but they possess something rarer, trust. And trust creates belonging. Loki understands this intellectually, but emotionally, it feels out of reach, like watching life through glass. Over time, Loki begins to punish himself with the very role he plays. He leans into deception not because he enjoys it, but because it confirms what he believes about himself. If this is all I am, then this is all I'll be. Each lie reinforces the story. Each betrayal justifies the isolation. It becomes a cycle, not of evil, but of resignation. There are moments, brief ones, where Loki hesitates, where he almost tells the truth without strategy, almost chooses vulnerability over control, almost believes connection is possible, but the risk is always too high, because if he fails honestly, there's no mask to blame, so he retreats, back to deception, back to safety, back to loneliness. Ironically, the world benefits from Loki's role. The trickster exposes hypocrisy, breaks stagnation, forces change, but being useful doesn't mean being valued. Loki is tolerated when convenient, and discarded when not, needed but never wanted, and that distinction hurts more than rejection. Here's the final irony of being the king of lies. Loki sees through everyone else's illusions. He recognizes fear, ego, and pretense instantly, but he is blind to one thing: the possibility that he could exist without deception, that truth might not destroy him, that credibility can be built slowly, but believing that would require hope, and hope is the one risk he never learned to take. Conclusion: why being the king of lies sucks. The cruel truth: Loki doesn't want chaos. He doesn't want destruction. He wants connection. But when lies are all you've ever used to survive, truth feels like danger. Being the king of lies doesn't suck because of punishment. It sucks because success guarantees isolation. No matter how clever the trick, no matter how powerful the throne, you always sit alone. And the greatest trick Loki ever played was convincing himself that this was the only way he could exist.